meeting is being recorded.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Christina Knobloch. I'm with the membership at the Napa County Farm Bureau, and we are very happy today to present a member seminar on cybersecurity. Today, we have Malcom Risk Advisors joining us. President and CEO David Malcom brings over 24 years experience in cybersecurity, risk management, internal audit, and data analytics. His career began as a consultant in the Big Four, after which he served multiple leadership roles at large global corporations. With a proven track record in delivering departmental transformation, he most notably built and led credentialed global IT, internal audit, and data analytics team at Accenture. David has served in multiple corporate executive roles. At age 33, David served as the Chief Information Security Officer for Global Hospitality Organization, where he was responsible for establishing their information security function. He also served as Managing Director in the Internal Audit Department of the Global Finance Institution, where he built teams focused on data analytics and addressing digital risks that accompany the use of new technologies. We're so happy to have David here today to present a little more on Malcom Risk Advisors. Thank you, David.
Thank you for having me. So 2 months ago, I started Malcom Risk Advisors, and this was I'd left the corporate world in 2023 and really deciding my next step. I decided I no longer wanted to work with big organizations, and informing Malcom Risk Advisors, the intent was to help small and medium-sized businesses.
Up next, the CEO of a unicorn logistics.
This to help small and medium-sized businesses solve their cybersecurity problems and challenges. So I work in a variety of ways with companies in all industries to help them solve their unique cybersecurity challenges. So today, just going through quickly, who I am, who Malcom at Risk Advisors is, do a quick introduction to what is cybersecurity, and then we're going to talk about some of the most common threats that are out there today, as well as some of the common terms you've probably heard, even if you're a novice or don't know much about cybersecurity, which includes phishing, social engineering, ransomware, insider threats, and data protection, and then sharing some best practices for use of internet and email for you and your employees. Now, you might be asking yourself, what would you be doing on a webcast like this? Why would we care? So when I started this organization, I realized that there was a gap for small and medium-sized businesses, that they typically don't have the resources to have a full-time security executive on staff. And by working with Malcom Risk Advisors, you get access to that executive level expertise on a part-time basis as you need access. So be it for a specific project or on a retained basis per month, we'll work with you in whatever capacity you need. And that's different. Most of the large consulting firms, they won't do that. They won't work with companies below specific revenue or size threshold. Whereas there's no company really that I'll turn down working with if they have a problem. Shockingly, you'll see a statistic on here: 43% of security attacks now target small businesses. So bad actors are fully aware that small businesses don't have the resources they need to protect their organizations from the threats and the attacks that they're launching. So that's what we're here to help you with, is to perform and manage your cybersecurity capabilities. So that's something you don't have to worry about. Well, you're focusing on what's most important to your business, which is running it, growing it in revenue, whatever that might be. But knowing that cybersecurity isn't something you have to have on your plate as well. So the vision here, like I mentioned, it's really that cybersecurity is not to be viewed as a luxury or an afterthought, but that it's embedded into the DNA of all organizations, regardless of size or budget. So Typically, I think that's how a lot of even big organizations look at security today. I always joked when I was the chief security officer at Hyatt Hotels that I was the chief good suggestion officer, because a lot of our hotels were franchised. They didn't really have to do, what I would recommend. So if they needed a new firewall, but they also needed new couches in the lobby, a lot of the times, the hotel owner would go with the new couches in the lobby because that would be, more important to them in the time for generating revenue. But I think we see today that everyone knows that the impact a cyber attack could have on an organization can be debilitating. And for small businesses, the statistic is 60% of small businesses that suffer a cyber attack go out of business within 6 months. So it's about 1.2 million to 1.6 million is the cost to recover or to recover or restore your systems after a cyber attack, which most organizations, in the small business space, they can't afford. So our values, access for all. So we believe every organization, no matter how small you are, deserves to feel safe from bad actors. Clarity over complexity. So cybersecurity is a very, very complex topic. We will explain it to you in a way that you will understand in terms of your business, what's important to you. Kindness and empathy. My goal is really to build partnerships. This is not the intent profit is not the first intent here. It truly is to secure the businesses that don't have the capabilities in place today. So, no matter, where you're at with your security, there's no judgment here. We're not here to shame you or to lecture you on ignoring security for so long. We're here to help you fix your problems and increase your security posture. So, why are we here? I mentioned a couple of these statistics earlier about targeting small businesses going out of business within 6 months of a cyber attack. 75% of small businesses experienced at least one cyber attack in the past year. A lot of that has to do with, if you think about COVID, most of your operations have been moved online, and that's just expanded the attack surface for bad actors. Average cost of a data breach, not a security incident itself, but just a data breach. So that's losing your clients' or your customers' personal data, your vendors' personal data, employees' personal data, is $120,000. And that includes lost revenue, legal fees, recovery efforts, also, things like identity protection. And the insurance companies are seeing this. And so a few years ago, everybody's response to the uptick in security attacks was, let's just get cyber insurance and we're covered. So you're seeing now the premiums, the insurance companies have caught on to this, and the premiums have increased by 40% in the last 2 years. 50% of small business owners believe they are not a target for cyber criminals. So this false sense of the security puts them at a greater risk. And then the last bullet point here, on average, small businesses spend less than 5% of their annual IT budget on cybersecurity. So given the threat environment that's out there today and the threat landscape that's out there today, this is not nearly enough resources to be putting towards the problem. So, just a quick, what is cybersecurity? So cybersecurity is protecting your computer systems and networks against unauthorized access and attacks. Cybersecurity capabilities are essential to protect sensitive data from unauthorized access and cyber threats, as well as maintaining trust and confidentiality. So you might ask, I don't have data that criminals would want. That no matter what business you're in, you do. You have personal information that on your customers, your clients, you have their buying history, you have employee information, including their social security numbers, other sensitive information about your employees. you have vendors that you have information on, you have your financial reports, you have your operating procedures, you have your recipes for some of the organizations that might be listening. A lot of intellectual property that's what the bad guys are after. So then, effective cybersecurity helps prevent disruptions caused by cyber attacks. So cyber attack obviously it takes you offline, prevents you from doing business online. By having a strong security posture, it helps you maintain the integrity of your critical business operations. And by suffering a breach, this may result in financial losses, reputational damage, and legal and regulatory repercussions, depending on your industry. So employee awareness is really key to preventing a cyber attack. So some of the common cyber threats that I mentioned, I'm going to get into more detail on these in some of the subsequent slides, so I won't spend a lot of the time here. Phishing attacks, so these involve a fraudulent attempt by a bad actor to obtain sensitive information by disguising themselves as someone you would trust. So we'll go into phishing quite a bit because I think that's, to me, the topic that most small businesses, most employees need to be educated on, and how they identify a cyber attack or a phishing attack, because that's typically the most popular attack vector into getting into your network is through phishing. Malware is the malicious software designed to harm or exploit any programmable device. And by that, we really mean a server, a computer, or a network device. Malware is typically what is installed on your machine when somebody is successful in a phishing attack. So the link that they provide in your in that email or an attachment that you might launch, that typically would have malware in it and would infect your system. The most popular kind of malware that you've probably heard of is ransomware. Ransomware is a type of malware that encrypts the data on your computer or in your network, and the attacker subsequently demands payment for the decryption and return of your data. So this is the number one threat right now that the bad guys are using. Some of them now are selling ransomware as a service as on the dark web. So if you get access to the dark web, you can pay a hacker for a ransomware package and deploy it to whoever you want. So this is the most prevalent attack that's out there today. And then I also want to talk a little bit about insider threats. So these are cyber attacks, rather than being initiated by a bad actor outside your organization, it originates within your organization by, probably one of your employees or one of your vendors that has access to your systems, who either through malicious action or accidents cause a data loss or another type of security attack. So it's the number of insider threat attacks is also rapidly growing. And you'll see, as we'll talk about it later, a lot of it is not malicious. It's just because employees are making mistakes, and they're mistakes that are very easily preventable. So now talking about phishing and social engineering, I think this is really the most important section of the training that I think you really want yourselves, your employees, to have the most awareness of. So phishing emails, they typically involve a request for personal information like your password or your credit card numbers, and there's always a sense of urgency to encourage you to act. So in a phishing email, you've seen these all the time. The sender uses emotion, urgency, or incentives. Your bank account has been compromised. Your account is going to be disabled. You get this all the time about your Amazon account, your Apple account. These are likely signs of phishing attempts. I'm sorry. So anytime you see urgency, it's something that seems like it's a problem that you really don't think you would face, because that you're up to date on your payments, you don't even use that service. That's a good sign that it's a phishing email. But also, looking at how they're worded. Phishing emails usually have very poor grammar, use very poor English, lots of spelling errors. So these are also, red flags for recipients. And then the links and the attachments that are in a phishing email. When you hover over a link on your computer, it'll show you where that link is going to take you. So it's always recommended, don't click on a link if you don't trust it. But if you want to get additional information on where that link's going to take you, all you have to do is hover your mouse over it and it'll show you where it's going to take you on the internet. So if it's an email, saying it's from Amazon telling you your account's going to be disabled, and then you get you see a link with a bunch of random letters and numbers in it, it's not going to take you to Amazon. It's a phishing email. And if you're on your mobile device, which is where they typically want you to be, because you're going to act with more urgency on a mobile device and also really not be able to see, you really see the full email, and you might do something on a mobile device that you wouldn't do on your computer. You can hold your finger on the link and it'll also show you a preview of the site. So those are highly recommended if you have questions or not on the legitimacy of an email. But most of the time you'll be able to tell just by reading closely in what they're saying to you, and also looking at who the email is coming from. And you can do the same thing. You'll see in the from address that it's coming from somebody that isn't in the Amazon domain. So their email address isn't at amazon.com. It's at, lettersnumbers.com. So it's not coming from the domain it's saying it's coming from. So a couple of exercises for us to go with, is this legitimate or not? So, a couple of things we said that to look for. You've not paid within our 30-day payment terms. You're subject to $1,000 late fee. Click on this link to pay directly, or you'll be subject to an even higher fee in the future. So, I look at that even higher, that's very, very vague. I wouldn't think that a medical supply company would use a term like even higher. You can check your own invoicing and your own payable system to see if, one, you even use this vendor, or two, you have an invoice with this number on it. But the most telling sign here that this is a phishing email is in the reply to line. So this email is perpetuating itself to be from Michelle Smith. However, if you look here, it's impersonating, it's a Hotmail account impersonating someone from medicalsupplies.com, which also was misspelled up here as well. And then this is the link that would contain the malware that they want you to click on. So this is not a legitimate email. This would be a phishing email. Now, what about this one? Your Microsoft account is about to expire due to inactivity. We want to inform you that the expiration date of your email account will be May 23rd, 2022. Let's just say that's May 23rd, 2025. That would be tomorrow. When the expiration date has elapsed, the following services will be disabled: sending and receiving messages, web applications that have been linked to your account. So you're going to panic. I'm not going to be able to send email. I'm not going to be able to access. What does this mean? Applications. I don't know what this even means. What am I not going to be able to do? So it's going to evoke emotion in you, and scare you into thinking about, is this true or not? So simply click here and log into your Microsoft account. Let us know that you're currently using this email. So thanks, Microsoft Corporation. And it does have all of Microsoft's information down here. So, what do you think? And again, it's no, as this is again a phishing attempt. So you'll see in the domain, lives-msn.com, it doesn't match up to a Microsoft domain. A very vague delivery subject. So the subject is support. That's the subject of the email. So you look at that, and that doesn't really feel like something Microsoft would use in a professional email to tell you they're going to immediately suspend your account. And then here again, immediate action is required, and a malware link is a simple request in the body of the email. So it doesn't seem malicious at first sight, but when you put all the other pieces together, you see that it is a phishing attempt. The other thing that you've probably been seeing a lot more of, and this has been such just a pain more than anything, is smishing. And what smishing is a form of social engineering using SMS or text messages. So how many of you have noticed an uptick in the number of text messages you're getting from numbers that are not in your phone, and just with brief messages, hello, meet for coffee, random phrases that you wouldn't expect to hear, or you have no idea who it is. They want you to start a conversation, and ultimately, that turns into some type of a phishing attack where they will eventually include a link to a website or, a phone number that, when you click on it, it will result in malware being installed on your phone. So, as we've become more trusting of text messages, it's become one of our primary mechanisms of conversation. This is obviously why it's become such an attractive threat vector for bad actors to utilize for phishing. So just in summary, how do we evaluate whether or not a suspicious email is a phishing attack or not? So the sender, is it unfamiliar or unexpected? So do you recognize who the sender is? Are you expecting a message from that person? And does the subject title of the email seem normal? So that's just in the header of the email, the things you should be thinking about when you evaluate, is this a phishing attack? Specifically in the from address, does it look legitimate? Double click the from, which is the email address, that it's being sent from. And as I mentioned before, they should have the same domain as the name that's showing on the email. So if you click on it, first, if it's showing as customer service at Amazon.com, and you click on it or hover over it and see it's from bob@scamu.org, that's a good indicator it is also a phishing email. When you get into the body of the message, what are the things to look for? Are they using correct English? Is everything spelled correctly? Is it formatted like you would expect a regular email to look? So, does it have the right branding in it? Does it look like, this is something that is a formal email that would come from a company that's like Microsoft or Amazon that is, threatening to disable your account immediately. And finally, encouraging to hover over all links or attached files. So hover over the link and look at the displayed URL, and does it make sense? Would you expect to receive an attachment of this nature from the sender? So this is the biggest one: is don't open attachments from the phishing emails. It's just the same thing as clicking on the link. It'll immediately launch malware onto your computer. So if you wouldn't expect an attachment on an email of the nature you're looking at, that's a good indication that it is filled with malware. So, and then, contact the company directly if you need to confirm that they sent the email. So they'll always be willing to, let you know that, no, this is not us. This did not come from us. Social engineering. So phishing is an example of social engineering, but it's broader than just the emails and the smishing that we talked about. So it's psychological manipulation that tricks a user into making mistakes or giving away sensitive information. So instead of exploiting vulnerabilities in software, the malicious actors are exploiting human emotions and for them to cause human error to get them the information they're after. So examples, emails that are sent by a friend that, it's not really sent by your friend. A message relaying a troubling story about someone you may know. So the bad actors are going out onto LinkedIn, they're going on to Facebook, they're trying to find, who are people and they'll make emails that'll look like they're coming from your friends or they're about one of your friends. Urgency, time is running out. Same thing as we were talking about with phishing. Typically, I'll have a message like that. And a lot of times it's often too good to be true. So these are where you see you've won gift cards, you've won, certain credits. Again, those are typically also social engineering attempts. And also, finally, this is something that you've never requested. So either you've never been in contact with this company or they're offering something that you've never asked for. Again, another example of something that is likely a social engineering attempt trying to get more information from you. So the first, form of contact that comes via social engineering might seem to be legitimate, but then you'll see they'll send a link or they'll ask for money. And that's when they will look to get data from you or install malware on your computer by sending that subsequent link. And so when I don't recommend communicating with these individuals that you think are social engineering you. But if you do, and they can't or won't confirm their identity, that's obviously a sign that it's a social engineering attempt. So what are the tactics that people are using when social engineering? So again, they're manipulating you into making you feel rushed or pressured. They're deceiving you and that saying that you're compromising certain security protocols, making you act urgently when you wouldn't typically do so. But because of the nature of the wording they're using, you get emotional and respond in a way you typically probably wouldn't. Impersonation is another, key risk that and a tactic that they use. So, ask yourself if the person that they're claiming to be would normally make this type of request to you. So, they're, like I said, I've gotten text messages for someone saying that they were the CEO of my company, asking me to go buy $50 Google gift cards for clients. Now, I played around with them for a while because I knew it was a phishing attempt, but I mean, they knew where I worked. They knew I was in a position of authority where I'd have a relationship with the CEO and text message me with his name and, what seemingly could be a very, probable or possible event, until they start asking for $50 gift cards. And you realize the CEO of Northern Trust Bank is probably not giving our clients $50 gift cards. And the urgency is again a way to pressure you into making hasty decisions that'll compromise your security. Engineers want you to react quickly before you can think. So as you're getting this, because this could be over the phone, as you're reviewing the email, write down as many details you can about the incident so you can report it to your security team, because it might be a threat that then is going to target your organization more broadly, because if they've got your work email address, they most likely have the rest of the individuals at your company's email address. So now I want to talk a little bit about ransomware, and it's no longer a matter of if, but a matter of when. I mean, this is what is keeping nation states in business today. So the amount of money a North Korea or Russia makes off of ransomware, these state-sponsored threat actors are launching these attacks, millions by the minute. And so this is right now, the biggest threat that's out there to companies is being hit with a ransomware attack. So why is ransomware any different than malware? Well, it's a form of, they're actually looking to extort you. So they're asking for a ransom in order to either unencrypt your data or unlock your computer so you can access it. So a ransomware, that's typically the type of attack it is. When you launch the malware on your computer, it'll encrypt all your data, or lock you out of your computer by changing the password, and the person that attacks you will then get in touch with you demanding money in order to get your data back. So the kind of the chain of events, malware infects your device. Depending on the type of ransomware, the attacker will then either encrypt your entire computer or individual files on your device, and then they'll demand a ransom in exchange for the promised return of your data. So, obviously there's financial impact as one of the biggest risks, because the ransomware attackers often demand large sums of money. It costs millions in lots of cases in order to both, or either to pay a ransom or to try to recover from the attack themselves rather than pay the ransom. The operational disruption. So if you think about, if you're locked out of your critical systems, if you're locked out of being able to access your data, this might completely halt you from being able to operate your business, or, cause significant delays as you have to start moving back to manual processes to do what you've been doing online for years and years, and people may not even know how to do that manually anymore. And then obviously your reputational damage, loss of customer trust, because of the negative immediate media attention that comes with a ransomware attack, will severely damage your brand, your reputation. And this really is something that that basically could cease your organization from operating further. So it could take you out of business. The impact alone on your reputation and trust. So how do you prevent ransomware attacks? First and foremost is to strengthen your access controls. That's implementing strong password policies, forcing your employees to change passwords frequently. And most importantly, this is one of the biggest things that came out of COVID was implementing multi-factor authentication across your entire network. So we'll get into multi-factor authentication specifically what that is and subsequent slides, but this is one where if you're going to invest in a security control, this is the top one you should be investing in. System updates, so regularly apply security patches to your infrastructure devices. So any servers you have any network devices, the vendor typically will release security updates when vulnerabilities are identified. So apply those patches timely, so a bad actor can't take advantage of the vulnerabilities in your network devices. And also as an individual, update your antivirus software when prompted. How many of us see that, you need to restart your computer in order to get this newest update? How many of us click delay, because we don't want to close all the files that are open on our computer, but there's a reason why they're asking, Microsoft's asking you to update that software. It's because there's been new threats identified, and the antivirus software on your machine is not going to prevent those viruses from attacking you. Employee awareness. So, training like this on phishing and safe browsing habits, that's one of the most critical ways. So ransomware attacks typically cannot happen without a human error being involved. So it's awareness training like this that is extremely important to help your employees identify and know what to do when they see suspicious emails or suspicious text messages or receive suspicious phone calls. So, also then finally, telling your employees to avoid downloading anything suspicious from the internet. You'd be surprised how much, if you don't have controls on your computers, how much people can download that, that you would think they wouldn't be any more games, specific software that's free that, might be a bootlegged version of something that they need. But a lot of times those are filled with ransomware hidden in those files. And then finally, the most important thing to do in preventing ransomware from impacting your company is maintaining a secure offline backup in near real time for your critical data. What that does is enables you to restore your systems and continue to operating without needing to pay the ransom. So you will have a second copy of your data that you can use, even though the the malicious actor has encrypted your primary source of data, you can use this backup and restore from there and continue operating your business. Now the bad guy still has an encrypted, database of yours and data that belongs to you and might do something malicious with it, but at least you'll be able to stay in business while you're undergoing this attack. And it's really sad to see some of the organizations that get hit by these ransomware attacks. Lurie's Children's Hospital in Chicago, where I live, they were hit and they were down for months. They couldn't do any, check-ins, checkouts, all the procedures that they've moved online, they could not do for months at a children's hospital. So they don't care who they're targeting here. They'll go after anybody. So this is something where, if you don't take anything from this training, understanding phishing, social engineering, and how those are attack vectors to get you to install ransomware on your machines, that's the most important section of this that I can't stress enough how important it is. So if you're a victim of a ransomware attack, the federal government does not recommend that you pay the ransom. The reason being is you're not going to get a guarantee that the malicious actor is going to give you your data back or unlock your systems. And more importantly, it's going to encourage further criminal action from the attackers. Now, I will say most companies do not follow this advice because they realize they don't have backups and they will not be able to get their business up and running unless they pay the ransom. So unfortunately, because companies don't have good backups of their data, they're forced to pay the ransom or else they won't be able to operate their business. Second, if there is just a specific device that is hit with ransomware, take that off the network and isolate it so it doesn't impact or doesn't spread across the rest of your network. So disconnect any devices that are hit with ransomware from your network. So it's contained just to that device. And then afterwards, recover and learn. So if you can, restore your data from backups and then conduct a post-incident assessment to determine how the attack was performed and how the likelihood of future attacks may decrease. What can you do to make the likelihood of being attacked again decrease? Because that's the other thing is a lot of these times these companies get hit, they don't do anything about it after they pay the ransom, and the bad guys do the same thing again because they know most of the time companies will not go back and fix the problems that they had and might not even be aware of the problems that they had, and then they'll get hit again with the same ransomware. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about insider threats and data protection. Insider threats are very interesting, this topic. So this is where, a security risk originates from within your organization. It can be an employee, a contractor, a business partner of yours who has legitimate access to your systems and data, but they misuse that either maliciously or unintentionally to cause harm to your organization. So there's three types of insider threats. So you have the malicious insider. This is somebody who intentionally steals, leaks, or sabotages data for personal gain, revenge, or espionage. So this is the wealth management firm. You have a advisor leaving the firm and they take their client list with them before they leave. That's a big one that happens quite often. So it's monitoring, what are your employees sending, out of your network, and is it valid or not? There's negligent insiders, employees who unknowingly cause security breaches through carelessness, such as falling for a phishing scam or mishandling personal data. An example of that can be a misdirected email. So, a lot of times, if you start typing somebody's name into your email, if I start typing Dave, it'll start maybe populate David at myemail.com, but I want to send it to some other David, but I accidentally sent it to the wrong one. And that itself, is then a data breach because you've sent data to someone who was not authorized to receive it. 56% of insider threats are caused by negligence. So insider threats are not necessarily the people that are looking to maliciously steal your data. It's your employees that are susceptible to a phishing attack. So again, just going back to being aware of what those attacks look like, what social engineering looks like and is, that's going to help you reduce the risk of a negligent insider. And then finally, there's a compromised insider, and this is someone whose credentials are stolen or misused by external attackers. One thing that I've learned in 2 months of being in business is every time I run a prospecting report for a client, it tells me how many of their credentials are out on the dark web for purchase. It is unbelievable the number of organizations whose user IDs and passwords are available on the dark web. And so this compromised attacker is, again, it's very easy. The bad actors, they know how to get into your systems to get the files that have your user IDs and passwords in them. They put them for sale up on the dark web, or they just post them out on the dark web. And then it's a free for all. Anyone who has access or who accesses the dark web can get into your systems. So insider threats are in many ways even more dangerous than external threats. Insiders, they know their way around your network. They know where your sensitive data is. They know where your most important systems are. Whereas a external attacker, it might take them weeks, months, years in your network before they find what they're looking for, something that might be worth money to them. Insiders, know what's valuable data that they can steal and harm. So your industry, depending on what your industry is, again, the data that's most important to you can be very different. So if you're in the food and beverage industry, your recipes are the most important thing you probably have. Whereas if you're in a financial institution, obviously your client's bank account information, your trading information, that's probably most sensitive. So the insiders know, what's the most valuable data and that they can steal and then, harm the organization with. And insiders also have legitimate credentials. They have a user ID and password that they use regularly to log into your systems. So that's the normal activity. So it really wouldn't get flagged as something malicious. So they could be doing this for a long time without getting caught, because it just looks like they're doing their job by logging into the system. So let's go through a few scenarios and identify if it's a malicious insider, a negligent insider, or a compromised insider. An engineer steals and sells trade secrets to a competitor. So by stealing and selling, this is obviously, an indicator of maliciousness. So they're, on his own, the engineer is stealing it himself and profiting himself, which therefore makes it a malicious insider. A maintenance technician cuts network server wires and starts a fire, sabotaging operations. Now, this could either be negligence based on, he accidentally cut the server wires, or it obviously could be malicious if it was an intentional one. And here, when you see the word sabotaging operations, makes me feel like that's a malicious attempt. An intern unknowingly installs malware on their computer. This obviously is negligence. So the intern clicks on a link they weren't supposed to and infected your network with malware. A customer service rep downloads client contact information and emails it to a personal account for when they're starting their own business. This again is a malicious insider. So they're the ones benefiting from the activity. They're the ones that benefit from the stealing the data. So therefore that would be a malicious insider. And then finally, a database administrator accesses client financial information and sells it on the dark web. Again, a malicious insider. So This is somebody that has access to this financial information as part of their job responsibilities. They take it out of your network and then sell it on the dark web. So again, this is a malicious insider. Now we're going to talk a little bit about data protection. Because this is important as we're talking about all of these threats is, how do you know what your critical data is and how you should protect it? So first, you need to understand the types of data your company has, and the company should assign specific sensitivity levels to that. And based on that sensitivity level, it might require specific restrictions or protections in place. So, the data always has to stay encrypted. It can't be emailed outside of the organization. Your company should have policies like this. So, your highly confidential data, your confidential data, your publicly available information, you have different controls around how you must handle and or handle or send or not send that information. So you need to know what data you can share and can't share outside of your network. And if this isn't something you've defined as an organization, highly recommend that you train your employees to understand the different classifications of data, what they can and can't do with each type of data, and understand the repercussions if there is a data breach or an intentional theft of data. So, for example, if you process personal data, there are data privacy risks and consequences that you have to deal with, and each of the states in the U.S. are individually now developing their own privacy laws. The most mature and the harshest are the state of California. So it's something that you should become familiar with and understand what you need to do to protect any personal data, personally identifiable information that you have within your company. So this is a long slide and I'm not going to drain it, but it's understanding the data security lifecycle. So first thing you have to do is to know where your sensitive data lives, because if you don't know where you have sensitive data, you cannot protect it. So the first thing to do is understand where in your network you have sensitive data. Once you have that data, you've discovered all of it, then you must apply your sensitivity level to it, understand what regulatory requirements might be assigned to it, and understand the business value of it. And then so when this allows you to then group data into categories such as personal identifiable information, financial data, intellectual property, and then you can apply whatever necessary controls to that type of data. The next one here is defining the rules that how data should be handled. So this includes your access policies, your retention schedules. So how long should you hold on to data? What's your business need for holding on to and using data? So you should be deleting data when it no longer serves a business purpose. Keeping more data than you need is just expanding the amount of data available for a bad actor to take. Next, then you monitor use and access. So there are tools out there that, I skipped ahead, protecting your data. So you want to add protective measures on your data that align with the governance rules you established earlier. So the more sensitive the data is, the more controls you have around it. So restricting access to it, encrypting it, having a data loss prevention tool that monitors that data and tells you when people access it and send it out of your network, depending on the sensitivity of your data, will drive the controls you put in place to protect it. Again, then that's also following how the data can move or how it's shared. So this data, there's going to be data you have that you can't email. So for example, if you are a company that handles credit cards, that you cannot email credit cards. You can't email credit card information. So you've got to have rules like that around what data transfers are not allowed, and you should have either both policies and preventative controls in place that that would not allow your employees to share data that is not allowed to leave your environment. Monitoring use and access. So this lets you know who is accessing your data, your employees from that perspective, who is accessing this, and then you can see behavioral analysis. So if I'm accessing the same files the same day at the same time, that's normal. But if I'm accessing something at 4 a.m. or from Kazakhstan, that probably isn't me, because I'm usually not up at 4 a.m. and I've never been to Kazakhstan. So if you see your IT department sees activity like that, that's usually a good indicator that somebody who is unauthorized within your company has access to your data. Responding quickly, every organization should have an incident response plan, and there are several of these you get examples of on the internet of what should be included in your incident response plan. But most importantly, it's, who do you contact? What do you do to minimize the spread of the attack? But all of this should be in an incident response plan that helps you ensure that you're prepared to respond in a manner that minimizes damages to your organization and helps you recover as quickly as possible. And then finally, I mentioned this earlier, when you no longer need data, you need to make sure that it's disposed of securely. This, just again, like I said, it ensures that you're minimizing your data footprint. You're minimizing the amount of data that you have that is valuable to a malicious actor. And so finally, some internet and email best practices. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly. When you're using the internet, always make sure a website starts with HTTPS. Years ago, this S didn't exist. This is now an indicator that the website is secure. So especially if you're going to put any personal information on a website, if it doesn't have that S, that means it doesn't have the updated encryption protocol, therefore you should not enter any information into that site. Avoid clicking on any links that don't look familiar to you. Like I mentioned, these are typically an attack vector to get malware installed into your environment. And understand the privacy settings on the various platforms to protect personal information online. So you'll see, a lot of times websites will ask you about cookies, and that's really asking if they can keep log the information of what you do when you're on their site. And they use that information then to send you'll see very targeted emails, you'll see targeted advertisements popping up. That's usually what happens with those privacy settings. So those aren't just something you just hit yes to every time, because what you're doing is allowing that company, that website, to track your activity while you're on the internet. Secure use of email. So using encryption. Usually whenever you send an email within your own organization, it is encrypted. However, when you're sending an email outside of your organization and it has sensitive data in it, you should have tools in place to encrypt those emails to make sure then when it's data in motion, when it's being sent from one network to another, it cannot be accessed by a malicious third party. So, if you send an email and it's not encrypted, think of it as a postcard. Anybody can see what's on it. So whenever you write an email, think of it like a postcard. If it has something on it that you don't want a third party to see, it should be encrypted. Verification before sharing. So I talked about misdirected emails earlier. Make sure that the recipient of your email is actually who you're intending to send it to. Misdirected emails are one of the top ways of causing a data breach. A lot of companies have disabled autofill of email recipients simply because these misdirected emails have become such a problem. So it's also something you may want to consider is disabling that ability to autofill senders. And then regularly update your password. So this is, very crucial. As I mentioned, obtaining user credentials is one of the main objectives through social engineering. And as I mentioned, like it is extremely more frequent than you realize that these credentials have been stolen and exist on the dark web. And so the first thing I tell a client, not a company that's not even a client yet, when I find their information on the dark web, is to tell them, I tell them to reset all their passwords, force a password reset, because all their credentials are on the dark web. Strong authentication. So again, using strong and complex passwords. I know these are not always the most fun things to, have to remember. Please don't write them down on post-it notes. I mean, that I typically have, I almost have a heart attack every time I go into an office and see post-it notes all over with people's passwords. Again, happens more often than you would think. You might even be someone that does that, but again, it's a very easy way for someone to get a hold of your password and gain unauthorized access to your data and your systems. Right now, with artificial intelligence, this is given hackers a new capability in how much stronger they can conduct brute force attacks on passwords. So passwords that, we used to say that'd be 8 characters and have a, uppercase letter and a number, because that couldn't be encrypted or that couldn't be guessed, for like 5,000 years. That number has gone down to days because of how many combinations a hacker can use and how quickly they can use those combinations thanks to artificial intelligence and automation. So complex passwords are something that are critical to protecting your systems. And then finally, like, as I mentioned earlier several times, enforcing regular password changes. I say every 6 months at a minimum, you should be changing your passwords. And then finally, multi-factor authentication. This adds an extra layer of security, making it more difficult for attackers to get into your systems. So not only are you required to enter your password to gain access, you're also required to access or enter another code. So you might get this a lot where it'll say, we just texted a code to your cell phone, enter that code now, and then you get access to wherever you're going. Or they'll say, we just sent a code to your email, and you go to your email and you get that code, and then you can access the website. So you're seeing this more and more. Companies are using multi-factor authentication, which is something you know, which is your password, and something you have, which is either your cell phone or your email address. And it's very unlikely for a bad actor to have access to both of those. So multi-factor authentication increases the odds of you keeping malicious actors outside of your system just substantially. So it's the most important control that you should have in place. As I mentioned earlier, if you're going to make one investment, invest in multi-factor authentication. And then responding to data breaches. We mentioned incident response plans, so making sure your employees are aware of the response plan, test them every year, update them every year, promptly report anything anytime you suspect there might have been a data breach or a security incident on your machine. If you hit an email or hit a link you think you shouldn't have, or if you've been victim of ransomware and you can't access data on your computer, report that as quickly as you can, because then you can effectively contain that damage and mitigate it from your network and the rest of your systems. So finally, just 3 items in conclusion. The importance of cybersecurity awareness. People are our first line of defense in protecting us from cyber attacks. So it is absolutely critical that they receive proper regular training on the relevant threat environment today. So if I would have conducted this training with you 5 years ago and I started talking about ransomware, none of us would have a clue what that meant because it didn't exist. It wasn't a big threat. But the threat landscape changes very rapidly. The attack vectors, the attacks used by the bad actors, it evolves so quickly. We need to keep our training updated and current to keep up with that threat landscape, so our employees know what to look for and what not to do to prevent a security incident at your organization. Understand the threats. So again, by going through this training, this is then more front of mind, top of mind to your users, and they're less likely then to make negligent mistakes. And also by understanding the threats that are most likely to impact your business, that's usually where you should be investing additional resources in securing those systems, those devices, whatever they might be. So know where your crown jewels, as they're called, are, and that's where you should be making your biggest security investments. And then finally, creating policies and procedures for security. Regardless of the size of your organization, you should have an information security policy that allows a reference point. It provides a reference point for all of your employees to go to understand and learn about the organization's overall security requirements, and to help ensure that you have a strong security posture. So that's the end of the training today. I'd like to thank everyone who has joined us and watched. If you have any specific questions, or I can provide you with any further assistance, my email address is david@malcomriskadvisors.com, and my phone number is 773-354-8533. Thank you again, and I appreciate all of your time.
David?
Thank you so much.
Look, I just want to add one quick question. David, what services would you offer a small to medium-sized company?
So this can be anything from, like I mentioned, being on retainer, where I can do vulnerability scans of your systems, identify, where you have to apply security patches to keep outsiders from getting into your system, defining your policies and procedures, helping you write incident response plans, doing maturity assessments of, based on the size, nature of your organization, do you have the ample amount of resources dedicated towards cybersecurity? I do penetration testing, so I can actually, with either information just available on the internet, or some information that you might want to give me, so I can impersonate an insider, conduct penetration testing to let you know exactly what somebody could do if they wanted to try to get into your network. So extremely powerful stuff that I recommend every organization does on an annual basis. And then finally, like I mentioned, these sweeps on the dark web. So I'll have alerts set up that'll tell me whenever information from one of my clients is out on the dark web. Therefore, I can notify them in a timely manner and take the steps we need to take to protect them. So I can do, any type of security projects you're looking for on a one-off basis, that are those that I mentioned just now, or, can also be kept on retainer and used for a specific number of hours each month on the services that are most important to you. And those are things that we would come to an agreement on as we talked and got to know each other, and I got to know your organization before we decided to move forward with anything.
Well, thank you so much for that wonderful information. For individuals and businesses alike, everyone can benefit from this great information on ways to protect yourself when doing business and on the internet. So we thank you so much, David and Malcom Risk Advisors, for being here with us today and sharing this great information. Again, please note the chat. We do have malcomriskadvisors.com. And always you can contact us here at the Farm Bureau to get more access. Also, we would just like to thank Malcom Risk Advisors for being a Farm Bureau member. We do appreciate your support of agriculture, and thank you for being here. Any questions, please give us a call here at the Farm Bureau. Have a great day, everyone, and thanks for attending this member seminar.